Okay, friends, chapter 8 is beefy. Got a couple sections we actually need to like read together here. So get ready. Right, I mean, so now we have seen that Ralph and everybody else has seen the quote unquote beast. We saw it. The beast had teeth, big black eyes, etc., etc. It lives up on the mountain. Now remember what quote unquote it is. It is the parachutist that's all like dead and decaying and looking all gross. And so also up on the mountain is where they've been having the signal fire. And so they can't go up and, well, they refuse to go up and tend to the fire now. And so of course Jack, as always, is like, oh, what about my hunters? And Ralph's just like, they're just little boys with sticks. They're not hunters. Like, what are you talking about? Of course, that really pisses Jack off. Jack is now calling assemblies. Jack is now openly unhappy with, leadership as it's been. And of course, everybody is all scared and nervous and up in arms. Beast comes out of the sea, it comes out of the dark, it's in the forest, it comes out of the trees. And if you think about what we've read so far, that makes sense according to our chapters. Beast from the sea, beast from air. Okay. Jack is now at this place where he's openly calling for Ralph to not be leader. On my page 127, Jack says, all right then. Who thinks Ralph should not be chief? He looked expectantly at the boys ranged round who had frozen. Under the palms, there was deadly silence. Hands up, said Jack strongly. Whoever wants Ralph not to be chief. The silence continued. I mean, so nobody votes for that. Nobody agrees with them. And of course, Jack is thrust into not just embarrassment, but full body shame. Okay. He laid the conch with great care at the grass at his feet. The humiliating tears were running from the corner of each eye. I'm not going to play any longer. Not with you. So that's actually pretty significant because now it's not fun anymore, right? What this also implies is that Jack and some of the other boys, not all, but Jack and some of the other boys have thought this has been a game. The entire time they have felt like it's been a game. I'm not going to play any longer implies that there's like another option, and there's not another option because they're not playing. They're like surviving. They're trying not to die, right? And Jack runs off into the forest, wherever. Piggy, Ralph, Simon are talking over here. It's like we gotta go up to the mountain. Like, what else can we do? Like, that's where the fire is. And of course, only Piggy could have the intellectual daring to suggest moving the fire from the mountain. He's like, well, we could just move the fire down here to the beach. And don't get me wrong, I suppose it, logically makes more sense for the fire to be like higher up. That way the smoke that it emits can go further up in the sky. But if there's, a big scary beast on the mountain right by the fire, I suppose they don't have that luxury, but you can still see smoke rising from a beach, from sea level. And they get to work. But as they're working, or as they're planning, they start to see that there aren't a lot of boys to help. My page 131, he looked round. Then for the first time, he saw how few big uns there were and understood why the work had been so hard. Where's Maurice? Where's Bill? Where's Roger? I expect they've gone. I expect they won't play either. So while Jack's coup, if you will, didn't work necessarily at the time, a lot of these other biggins who, like Jack, who like hunting, who like playing at the fort, who like, or the castle, whatever, even though they didn't, vote for Ralph's unseating at the time, they have now left, and they have left to join Jack. The twins are still there, but they are realizing that everybody's gone. Piggy, of course, oh, we'll be okay. We'll be fine. And then at the end of this section on my page 132, they're like, wait a second, where'd Simon go? Simon wouldn't go with Jack. And Simon's not with Jack. Let's read this paragraph together. Bottom of my page 132. It's kind of its own little paragraph. Simon had passed through the area of fruit trees, but today the little ones had been too busy with the fire on the beach and they had not pursued him there. He went on among the creepers until he reached the great mat that was woven by the open space and crawled inside. You'll remember this from chapter 3, I think. Beyond the screen of leaves, the sunlight pelted down and the butterflies danced in the middle of their unending dance. He knelt down and the arrow of sun fell on him. That other time the air had seemed to vibrate with heat, but now it threatened. This is the heat that's threatening. Soon the sweat was running from his long, coarse hair. He shifted restlessly, but there was no avoiding the sun. Presently he was thirsty, and then very thirsty. He continued to say, what do we call very thirsty? We call very thirsty dehydrated. And if you know anything about what dehydration does to us, it's actually terrible for us. Our blood sugar gets all crazy and our cognitive abilities change. It can lead to things like heat stroke, like all kinds of nonsense. And so Simon is, this is still a tropical island. It's still midday, so it's still like really hot. And he's just sitting there like sweating, not drinking water. So he's becoming dehydrated. Pay attention to that. Okay, so now we, kind of flash to Jack and his growing little tribe, I say. And he's like, you know what? We're not gonna worry about the beast. We're just not gonna worry about that. And you know what? On this side of the island, we're not gonna worry about, fear and bad dreams and stuff like that. We're gonna hunt. We're gonna have fun. We're gonna get some pigs. Let's go get some pigs. Right. Okay. So then we have this, really great kind of like hunting scene on page 134. The pigs lay bloated, bags of fat, sensuously enjoying the shadows under the trees. Sensuous is an interesting word. Its connotation is if something or someone is sensuous, it's related to sex, and so it's related to just kind of like this pleasure that you're deriving from life, I suppose. So these pigs are just laying there in the heat, being all fat and happy. And Jack and the boys, I'm so sorry. I make these like in the morning when I first get to work and coffee hasn't kicked in. But they kind of sneak up upon these pigs, and of course they just go after them. And now they're pretty good experts about hunting and killing pigs. Top of my page 135, they surrounded the covert, the secret area, but the sow got away with the sting of another spear in her flank. The trailing butts hindered her, and the sharp, cross-cut points were a torment. She blundered into a tree, forcing a spear still deeper. And after that, any of the hunters could follow her easily by the drops of vivid blood. The afternoon wore on, hazy and dreadful with damp heat. The sow staggered her way ahead of them, bleeding and mad, and the hunters followed, wedded to her in lust, excited by the long chase and the dropped blood. They could see her now, nearly got up with her, but she spurted with her last strength and held ahead of them again. They were just behind her when she staggered into an open space where bright flowers grew and butterflies danced around each other, and the air was hot and still. Here, struck down by the heat, the sow fell, and the hunters hurled themselves at her. This dreadful eruption from an unknown world made her frantic. She squealed and bucked, and the air was full of sweat and noise and blood and terror. Roger ran round the heap, prodding with his spear whenever pig flesh appeared. Jack was on top of the sow, stabbing downward with his knife. Roger found a lodgment for his point and began to push till he was leaning with his whole weight. The spear moved forward inch by inch, and the terrified squealing became a high-pitched scream. Then Jack found the throat, and the hot blood spouted over his hands. The sow collapsed under them, and they were heavy and fulfilled upon her. The butterflies still danced, preoccupied in the center of the clearing. Of course, they all stand back. They say, look, the boys start giggling. Where has the spear gone? Right up her ass. Now then, young people, brace yourselves. I have to tell you that these two paragraphs are all about sex. Tons of sexual imagery going on here. Let me be very clear. No, they are not having sex with the pig. But we have to look at some of this coded kind of heavy language that Golding uses here. Again, it's a lot of, now brace yourselves. It's a lot of heat. It's a lot of dampness. It's a lot of blood. It's a lot of excitement. It's a lot of lust. It's a lot of spurted. It's a lot of staggering. It's a lot of, kind of all of that very like sexual type imagery, right? And then this second paragraph here is very action oriented, shall we wear, if you will. Hurled themselves at her, an eruption from an unknown place, bucking and sweating, prodding with his spear. A spear is what we call a very phallic object, which means it's long and cylindrical. Stabbing downward with his knife, another phallic object. His point, leaning with his whole weight, heavy and fulfilled upon her. And then, of course, the fact that, this spear did enter an orifice, if you will, right? So Golding, why does Golding put this in here? One, we got to remember the age of these boys. Like we are just getting into puberty, and oh my God, that's such an age. It's a rough age. But we also have to remember where Jack and now the rest of these boys are working from in terms of psychology. They live almost entirely in the id. And the id is in charge of our impulses. The id is in charge of our drives. And for almost everybody, the sexual drive is like a big part of our lives, a big part of, our beings, right? And, so he kind of puts together this image of something that is often life-giving with something that is life-taking. He uses this violent imagery in connection with this sexual imagery to show just how primal the boys have gotten, and just how again, just how rooted they are right in the id, Of course, they're thrilled by this, especially with how this pig actually ended up dying. You'll remember that was Roger. that was doing that. And it's interesting enough, like as much as they're quote unquote not going to talk about the beast, they do decide to sever the pig's head, jam it onto like a stick that's in the ground, and Jack is referring to it as a gift for the beast. This head is for the beast. It's a gift. The silence accepted the gift and awed them. The head remained there, dim-eyed, grinning faintly, blood blackening between the teeth. All at once, they were running away as fast as they could through the forest toward the open beach. Okay. We go back to Simon. We go back to Simon on my page 137 in his, wherever he is. Physically, he's in that little, well, geographically, he's in that little kind of secret hiding place in the middle of the forest. Physically, he's not doing well. What's interesting is this whole gift for the beast that Jack and the boys have left is within viewable distance of where Simon's been hiding. So it's in the same spot where this has happened. So Simon can kind of see what's going on. And look what's happening here. They assured Simon that everything was a bad business. I know that. Simon discovered that he had spoken aloud. He opened his eyes quickly, and there was the head grinning amusedly in the strange daylight, ignoring the flies, the spilled guts, even ignoring the indignity of being spiked on a stick. A gift for the beast. Might not the beast come for it? The head, he thought, appeared to agree with him. Run away, said the head silently. Go back to the others. It was a joke, really. Why should you bother? You were just wrong, that's all. A little headache. Something you ate, perhaps. Go back, child, said the head silently. So again, we have to remember what's happening to Simon here. He's entering into this like delirium. And like he sees what's going on. Even the butterflies are like now leaving the space. Oh, this is so gross. The pile of guts was a black blob of flies that buzzed like a saw. After a while, these flies found Simon. Gorged, they alighted by his runnels of sweat and drank. They tickled under his nostrils and played leapfrog on his thighs. They were black and iridescent green and without number, and in front of Simon, the lord of the flies hung on his stick and grinned. At last, Simon gave up and looked back, saw the white teeth and dim eyes. The blood in his gaze was held by that ancient, inescapable recognition. And Simon's right temple pulse began to beat on the brain. So now we get to that point in every book where we realize why it's called what it's called, the Lord of the Flies. Physically, is this pig's head on a stick that's been just swarmed with flies because obviously, right? But we'll see here like what the Lord of the Flies means in terms of religion. So your class probably will do some like religious imagery assignment. And so like you'll talk about that, like who was the Lord of the Flies, what does the Lord of the Flies translate to, kind of stuff like that. But Simon is not in a good way right now. Right, so we find, we're back with Ralph and Piggy. Where's Sam and Eric? Oh, they went to go get more wood, supposedly. Ralph is annoyed that he's starting to think like a grown-up. It's a rough day. But he still is coming from this place of like, I mean, what would happen if we just stopped caring? In fact, Ralph asks at the bottom of my page 139, what makes things break up like they do? So he's like, what went wrong? Why didn't this work? Why couldn't we kind of keep together? Jack and his tribe, of course, realize that there's something they need in order to light fires, in order to cook meat. Of course, that's Piggy's glass. And so they basically like come and attack Ralph and Piggy and the little ones. Remember, the little ones are still with them at this time. But now they're showing up in painted faces, looking like true, I don't know, jungle persons. Of course, Ralph recognizes Jack, and Jack is appealing to the crowd. We hunt and feast and have fun. If you want to join my tribe, come and see. Perhaps I'll let you join. I mean, so it's kind of like this whole like, okay, now let's get everybody to join with us. Remember thinking about the mask. He was safe from shame or self-consciousness behind the mask of his paint and could look at each of them in turn. So in real life, it's hard to confront people and be like, oh, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. But when you're covered in paint, it makes it easier to do, you know. They realized that was Jack, Maurice, and Robert. Piggy's like, oh, my asthma. Of course, Piggy is really cradling the conch shell. And of course, what is it that the conch represents? It represents order. It represents civility. It represents togetherness in a sense. And so Piggy is literally holding on to it. And of course, you know, Jack and Maurice and Robert leave, and the boys are sitting around talking. And of course, they get to talking about meat, and they're like, "Oh, that sounds pretty good, actually. Like that sounds really nice, actually." So, as much as they don't want to be with Jack and all them, I mean, they're contending with again their id. They're contending with their hunger. They're contending with this crisis of like, should we be responsible, or should we just, you know, go off and quote unquote have fun all the time? So this is what's going on. I mean, so now we officially have different tribes going on, and the rest of the big ones, Jack's group, they're trying to like recruit everybody else and turn into this whole thing. And let's finish the chapter talking about Simon one more time.
You are a silly little boy. Don't you see, just a silly, ignorant little boy. Don't you agree? Aren't you just a silly little boy? Well then, you'd better run off and play with the others. They think you're batty. You don't want Ralph to think you're a baddie, do you? You like Ralph a lot, don't you? And Piggy and Jack? What are you doing out here all alone? Aren't you afraid of me? There isn't anyone to help you, only me. And I'm the beast. Fancy thinking the beast was something you could hunt and kill. You knew, didn't you? I'm a part of you, close, close, close. I'm the reason why it's not going, why things are what they are. Come now, get back to the others and we'll forget the whole thing. This is ridiculous. You know perfectly well you'll only meet me down there, so don't try to escape. This has gone quite far enough. My poor misguided child, do you think you know better than I do? I'm warning you. I'm going to get angry, do you see? You're not wanted, understand? We are going to have fun on this island, understand? We are going to have fun on this island, so don't try it on, my poor misguided boy, or else we shall do you, see? Jack and Roger and Maurice and Robert and Bill and Piggy and Ralph, do you? See?